I think I like it. Hey, welcome back. I recently threw a couple of vases and I didn't have a plan. Well, I probably did, but I veered away from the plan and I made them spiky when they were leather hard. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I really enjoyed how they've turned out so far, and I think they'd work really well as a trio. Two different vases and a nice bowl that was equally spiky. What I'm going to do is through a large bowl. I'm not sure how many kilograms. I'm thinking maybe 3, but we'll see. And yeah, we'll see how it turns out. So let's throw the bowl. The bowl has been trimmed, and the next step will be adding on the spikes. So still leather hard. I've got my needle tool, a scoring tool, some clay, and some slip, and a bit of water as well. What I'm going to do is trace an outline very lightly using the needle tool on the bowl of roughly where I want the spikes to be, and I'm going to score that section and then create the spikes as I need them. just form them in my hand and stick them on. I'll show you the vases that I made previously that this will be the matching piece for. This is one of the two pieces. I actually used slabs for the spikes initially. I rolled out quite thick slabs. I cut out, the slabs were 1 centimeter thick, and then I cut out rectangles that were 1 centimeter by 2 centimeters, and then I cut them in half, and then I squished them in my hand and applied them. It was a long way of doing it. I think making the spikes as I go will be faster. So we'll see. After doing this for quite a while, I found a slightly easier way to make all the spikes. So I was grabbing some clay, rolling it up, and then like pinching and pushing and pulling the spike down a little bit with my fingers. It was taking too long and my joints will start to hurt if I keep doing that. So instead, take a little ball, roll it up, and then kind of roll one edge just to spike it. It just seems a little easier and gentler on your hands. That took a while. I don't know how long that was, but I expect it was at least an hour, probably longer. What do we think? I think I like it. Yeah, I'll dry this super slowly and put it in for bisque firing as soon as I can. We survived mostly the bisque firing. We did have one little mishap. A singular spike. It was loose. I was kind of just checking the spikes and one was hanging down. I worried that might happen because the spikes were put on as fresh clay and the bowl was a touch on the dry side of leather hard. I'm not terribly surprised. Whereas the spikes on the previous vases that I made them out of slabs, which was more time consuming. And I prefer the look of the spikes from the fresh clay, but the bowl should have just been a little bit on the wetter side. That's all right. We can hopefully stick it on with glaze. It's actually a little bit hard to spot it. There. I'm not too sad. It'll be all right. I've been thinking so much about how I want to glaze these. I made so many decisions and I kept changing my mind. What I am going to do now is mix up a cobalt oxide wash, brush that over the spikes, and then pour my floating pink over the entire outside and inside of all the pieces. What I hope happens is the spikes will have a pop of blue/purple. Yeah, but we'll see. I've experimented with oxides a couple times in the past. I'll grab a... This is a previous bowl I made, which I broke through use, but I got like a spatter effect on the cobalt through just flicking the paintbrush on the inside, and then I drew a little spiral and I poured floating copper on this, and I did similar on the outside and a few brush strokes. I really love how the blue is so strong and vibrant. It really comes through. So hopefully the same happens here, but it will hopefully turn out purple. So let's see. It's very easy to mix up too much of this, and it's very easy to put in too much water. I'm going to try go easy. Dirty spoon. All right. I'm going to start with a tiny amount and just add to it, hopefully. That is a very small amount. I find it really, really helpful to just have a big jar just of clean water in the studio. I never mix anything in there. It just means I always have a tiny amount of water for little things like this. All right, I'm mixing it. I'm using quite a big brush. This is not going to be delicate work. I just want to apply large patches, I guess. Let's go. It's kind of flicking oxide onto the pot as I go, and I don't mind it. Another combination I considered was red on the spikes and black elsewhere. Just because spikes are a warning, aren't they? I do have a really beautiful red glaze that looks quite like blood, to be honest, but it does not pair well with many other glazes. I'm not going for full spike coverage. That's nice. It's going on really nicely, I think. It's what I had in mind. I love that. Oh no. That was not what I intended. That was far too much liquid. It ran. From experience, that is very, very difficult to get off. Let's hope it turns out nicely. The amount of weight that you add from these spikes is surprisingly a lot. when to stop. I've not forgotten about this little guy. Blend in. Blend in with your peers. All right, let's go. Let's glaze. Oh. Nope, not happy with that. Whew. It looks like I've started, but that's because I had, and I wasn't happy with the glaze. It was a little bit lumpy, so I just re-blitzed it and added some more water and scraped the glaze out, and so we're going again. So thick. This is such an awkward shape to glaze. I think the inside is a bit overglazed, but I still haven't finished. Who says glazing is stressful? This is calming. This is me calm. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying this. This isn't stressful. And ruin it all by sticking my finger in it. Great. Okay. Hopefully a small shape is a little bit easier. Oh, it's much better. I should only make small things. Yeah, I'll leave them all a little bit. It is a bright and windy day, so I think I'll put them outside, even for 10 minutes. I have let these dry really thoroughly from the inside glazing and given the spiky bowl a really good rub down to try remove any excess glaze. I'm going to try stick this spike back on and then glaze the outsides. So I've never reattached something and hoped the glaze would fuse it on, because normally if something breaks, it would no longer be food safe, or it would be a handle, something load bearing. This is just decorative, so it's kind of unique, and I'm going to give it a try. I reckon if I dip this into the glaze and then attach it on and then pour the glaze over the whole piece as I would have done anyway. I'm just gonna, oh no, the one next to it's loose as well. All right. Okay. It took quite a lot of glaze to make sure all the spikes were covered. All right, show time. going to let this dry a little bit more and then touch up as needed on any little any spots where I've missed with the glaze. The good news is the spike has stayed on so far. I'll finish tidying these up and then get them in for a glaze firing. There's a reason this came out on the kiln shelf. Glaze firing is done. The spiky bowl, there are some things that I love and some things that I don't love about how they came out of the kiln. Firstly, I don't love that it has melted, the glaze has melted and ran onto the kiln shelf more than anything I've ever made. This is a new personal record. It looks like ice cream. So this has gone on too thick. This is a me problem. It didn't come out the way I hoped. None of them did. So the two phases, the pink is just a little inconsistent. What I do love is how the cobalt oxide wash has turned out this really vibrant, beautiful blue-purple color. And there are some dots, there are some runs, which I really, really love. They look like ink running down a page. I think that bit is fantastic. That's the same on both phases. The glaze is just, the application isn't consistent. What I do love about the big bowl is I changed how I made the spikes. I did get better results with the spikes. None of the spikes on either of these came off with that method. However, when I made the spikes for the big bowl, I just used fresh clay and I rolled them and applied them. And they're much skinnier and spikier. I really love those. But because the glaze was wetter for the spikes compared to the slightly drier bowl, which was leather hard, I had a couple come off, which you saw in the pre-glaze firing. Let's see how this comes off now. Ooh. Okay. It's a shame because look at the drips. I love that effect. I really, really do. The problem is I obviously applied the glaze too thick, but because I made sure to cover the spikes, a lot of the pink glaze ended up in here. So whenever it melted, it just all ran down. I think the top half, the application was mostly fine. Maybe a touch uneven in one or two places, but it's just the below half where it's just really ran. But how cool are those streaks? That I'd love to get again without ruining the kiln shelves. But you can hopefully see the chunks of pot that are just missing. That's, oh, I've not had any nearly as bad as that. The inside, I've just applied it too thick everywhere. I'm not sure why I keep going so thick with this glaze. This wasn't really part of the project, but just to show how it can turn out, this was a singular Christmas ornament that I just wanted to glaze to test how the lettering showed up. And the color is a little bit paler because I did not put on as much glaze. I dipped it quite quickly, I think, but it's so even. It's such a nice pink. I just need to control myself when applying it to stop going so thick. I might also water it down a little bit more. I put in a little more water into the glaze mix before this firing. I'll do that again. But this just turned out so good. Really nice application. Really consistent. Nice pale pink color. Still solidly pink. The bowl is definitely not usable. That in no way can be saved, even as a second. That was just an education. Part of my education. I'm not sure about the two vases. I don't think that they're good enough. But I'll not destroy them yet. I'll sit with that decision before I make anything. I don't think I'd be happy selling that. I don't think many people would be happy buying that. That's a fair test. It's impressive how much has ran. That is such a chunky piece of pot left behind. That's not just glaze. That is a lot of pot there, there, and there. It's huge. I'm not gutted because I think I've learned a few things, and I'm excited about doing this again and hopefully doing it better. The spikes are actually sharp. They're so fine. The piece that I had to reattach, here we have the spike that came loose that I hope to reattach with the glaze. It separated a little bit. It is still attached to the piece, but that alone would make it not good enough as a final piece, let alone the glaze, the running, the pot getting ruined on the kiln shelf. Such huge sections missing. But the waterfall of blue, I love that. I really love that. This is just something that happens. What I have to do to make this kiln shelf usable again is get rid of as much of this material as possible and then rebat wash. I'll show you what I do. I do 2 steps normally. A hammer and chisel to get the largest amount off, and then I go in with a Dremel just to grind any remaining glaze that is really sunk in. Once it's as clean as I can, I will then reapply bat wash and let it fully dry. But yeah, I'll let you see that process too. Yeah, the way I do this is just try to remove as much material as possible while using as little force as possible. We really don't want to break the shelf. Ooh. I was trying to grind that down for quite a while. This section almost fully gone. Over here, there's still a little bit of the color showing. And also, one of the bits I was using broke while it was grinding. And initially I thought the top, the coarse bit just came off the metal, but it actually, the coarse stone itself is what broke in several pieces. That's really bad luck. Because I couldn't get all of it off, and again, because I've never had anything run this badly, what I hope is that if I apply enough bat wash, that will be such a small amount of glaze trapped under the bat wash that it might be all right. But to be safe and careful, I'm going to apply bat wash really generously, and I will keep this shelf separate so that once it's fully dry, whenever I'm doing a glaze firing or something else, I can put that in empty at the very top or the very bottom and give it a chance to cook while there's nothing on it, or maybe a small test piece that I don't mind losing in case it fuses to the shelf. But I have high hopes that it should be fine. Bat wash is so simple to apply. It's just get it on as thickly as you can. I've started just pouring it straight on and then spreading it around with my dedicated bat wash brush. I really want to make sure it gets in to the parts that I was grinding on. This has been a bit of an experience and a bit of a lesson. I think that's okay though. Whenever I'm making pottery, I feel like I'm in one of two modes. I'm either making something that I've tested that I'm fairly confident with, or I'm stretching and I'm trying something new and I'm experimenting a little bit. I think you got to do both, and you have to be willing and accepting of things going not right the first time. That's okay. Maybe not right the second time. So it's really great to experiment and it's really great to test. And it's a shame that sometimes it melts everywhere and ruins your kiln shelves and you're excited about it, but that's okay. I'm going to try these again. I had a lot of fun doing this and I learned so much. I learned what I'm going to do differently next time. I really hope that this was fun to watch, and thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed and if you've watched to the end, I'd really appreciate if you did subscribe. It really just helps me out. Thank you so much and have a great day.